welcome to the Sanctuary, a safe space to speak from the heart. I'm your host, Israel, and my guest today is someone I've been dying to talk to. I follow her Instagram religiously, and I love how open and very highly educative she is, especially on her Substack. Super duper excited to welcome my friend Danielle, and also openly committed on everything, really. Thanks for coming to the Sanctuary today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, excited to
Because
chat.
I want to say Instagram, but then that's also your Substack names. I'm like, hey, that's kind of like your brand, right? Openly committed. Actually, let's start with that. What is the story behind that name?
You know, when my husband and I first opened up our relationship in 2010, we wrote a blog together, and it was called Open Commitment, and it was opencommitment.com. And, we only kept it going for about the first 6 months, maybe first 9 months of our relationship. And he would write his perspective and I wrote my perspective. And that website was called Open Commitment. And so when I started creating content about 3 years ago, I loved that. I still love that name. I feel like it really reflects kind of what I believe makes a relationship great and open commitment. Uh, and it's a little, it's most people call it an oxymoron, but it's what I wanted to keep. So I stuck with it and turned it into Openly Committed.
Yeah, totally love it. And yeah, I mean, I think I usually like going to the beginning, but there's so many things that have happened in the last week that's like so huge. I'm like, I just want to lead with that. The other
Sure.
day you said that you told your parents, and that's one of the most raw, honest, and eye-opening like piece of writing I've read in a very long time.
Oh,
And I
thank
think
you.
what added to it was that you actually shared this, message your mom wrote too. So why did you write that? And then why did you share your mom's, I guess, what she wrote?
Mm. One of the big questions I get from many of my followers or anonymous people online is, how do you tell your parents or how do you tell friends and family that you're in an open relationship? And we have a lot of stories out there of people that have come out as gay, queer, come out as trans. And I think all of these stories are so unique. They're so different. And so I wanted to share my story of kind of coming out as open with my parents. It was probably one of the most difficult moments of my life, of my relationship with my parents. I come from a very close-knit family. We're from small town Texas. I have an amazing relationship with my parents, with my extended family. And so when we told them, that was a big deal. And it was hard. As I kind of mentioned in my story, the first time I told my friends, I told them early on. So my boyfriend and I had only been in an open relationship for a few months, and I wasn't really sure that I even wanted to be open at that time. And when I told my friends, they told me, that this wasn't going to work out, that he was just using me, that I'd never wanted something like this, that it wasn't good for me, and I wasn't ready to answer any of their hard questions. I wasn't ready to defend my relationship style because I wasn't even sure of my relationship style at that point. And so we waited many years. We waited almost 8 years until we told my parents that we're in an open relationship. And when we did, we were pretty direct. We were also very confident in our choices at the time. We'd been together for 8 years. We had 2 kids. We just bought a home together, and it was the right time to tell them. And when
Wow.
it's one of my biggest recommendations. If you're going to tell loved ones, friends or family, anything difficult, anything you're worried that they might not support, tell them when you could answer the really hard questions, because my parents asked really hard questions. And it's one thing to get hard questions from internet strangers and who don't know you and who don't care about you. And it's a different thing to get questions from someone who genuinely loves you and wants the best for you and wants the best for your kids.
Mm. And why did you share our answer? How, the piece of writing your mom did?
So I shared my story because I wanted it to be out there in the world. I was hoping it would be helpful for anyone who wanted to come out to their friends and family. And I thought it would just be really important to have my mom's perspective. So We came out to my parents, and at first, and I share this whole story on my Substack, and right after we told them, we sat down. This is the story that I share. We sat down in the living room with glasses of wine. We told them we're in an open relationship when we opened it up for them to ask us any questions. And after they asked us questions and voiced their concerns, both my parents said, "We don't want to hear about this ever again. Don't tell us. We don't want to know any details. We don't want you telling family." And that was really difficult because I don't keep a lot of secrets from my parents. And 6 years later, my parents know about it and are comfortable talking about it. And so 4 years after we told them, my mom started sending me links because she heard things about open relationships. And so she sent me a Katie Couric article, and then she sent me another article that she had read somewhere. And she didn't really want to talk about it, but you could see it was on her mind. And then I had friends and family send her some of my Instagram videos. I had a family member in particular send my mom one of my Instagram videos and say, "Wow, look at what Danielle's doing. This is so beautiful. Her information is so helpful. You must be really proud of her." And then I think, and then my mom was like, okay. And so she very, very, very slowly kind of opened her mind to it, tried to understand it more. And even though she still doesn't agree with our relationship choices or our relationship style for that matter, she's deeply religious and she's Christian. And she believes that her job is to love us and to not judge us. And that was kind of her perspective that she shared in my Substack. She shared her Bible quotes that she references when she's thinking about love and when she's thinking about loving someone unconditionally. And I wanted to share her perspective because it is a perspective from a conservative religious background. And I feel deeply loved, deeply supported, even though someone doesn't agree with my choices. And I wanted to share that for others, that honestly, to give them some hope, because it took my parents 6 years to be able to talk to us about it. But it was 6 years, and now and now I can talk to them about it. And that's really powerful. It's really special. And I hope that for everyone. So my biggest takeaway from that is be patient, especially with your older generation with our parents, with people that love us, because sometimes it works out. And in my case, it worked out. There's a happy ending to my story, and that's really special.
Yeah, I mean, glad you had that. I was sharing it with a friend, and they were like, "Why would you decide to do that?" But I think you actually shared it in your answer when you're like, you don't have secrets, or you rarely have secrets from your parents. But then there are going to be people that are like, wouldn't it just be easier? Because like you have this relationship, it's been working for you. Wouldn't it be easier to just not share or tell people?
Yeah.
Especially parents.
I think it just depends on the relationship style that you want to have with your parents. I was raised in a family that were very honest, we're very open with one another, and I think that level of honesty means I still have a very close relationship with my parents. And I think when you have a close relationship with someone, you want to be fully seen by them. I wanted my parents to know this aspect of me and my lifestyle. And in my case, I'm public about it, right? I have a public channel. Yes, I'm sure, like, all my small town Texas have probably seen some of my videos and sent them to my parents and my family members. And so I felt like it was important that my parents hear this about our relationship from us and not from anyone else.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, this is just a personal choice. I think so many people, the reason they want to come out is so that they feel like their parents can fully see and understand them. And but if you don't want to tell your parents, don't. Not everyone wants to or needs to.
Yeah, I think you do that with actually lots of the content you share too. It's like it's your thing, it's your lived experience. This
Yeah.
is how it has worked for you these years. So let's go back to the genesis. How did this all start for you guys?
The open relationship or the content?
No, the open relationship.
Open relationship. My now husband, but then boyfriend. So my boyfriend brought up the idea just a few months into dating. We met, we hit it off almost instantly. My whole family nicknamed him the 20-minute man because I met him and within 20 minutes I was like, wow, this guy is incredible. And told my whole family about this guy that I met for 20 minutes. And so we started dating. And a couple months into dating, we went on our very first kind of miniature weekend long getaway together.
Mm,
And he asked me if I would consider being in an open relationship. And neither of us
mm,
had been before. I don't think I had ever heard the term polyamory until at that point in time. And so at first, I was hurt and confused and offended. I thought I had met the man of my dreams, and now he's bringing up this idea of an open relationship. And he brought it up because he had seen affairs destroy families and destroy relationships. And I think we approached it in the sense of, okay, we've got something really special here. We want to be together forever. How do we do that? And how do we do it in a way that makes sense for us and that really works for us? I was 25 at the time. He was 29 when we met. I wasn't sure I wanted to settle. I didn't want to settle down. Like, I was in my mid 20s. I was having a great time. And so we started the open relationship as just a discussion of what do we want for us and what do we want the rules for our relationship to be, regardless of what society thinks they should be.
mm, 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 mm.
And in hindsight,
And
I
then
make it so easy, but it was 2 years of back and forth and freaking
that
out.
is that was what
Yeah,
I was about to say.
it was
Like,
2 years of trial and error and
ex-
mistakes, and I kissed someone and we talked about it, and he kissed someone and we talked about it, and then I went on a date and we freaked out, and then he went on a date and and then I got jealous and then he got jealous and we vetoed people and then we didn't, and then we had a threesome and we went to a swingers club, and like we had a 2-year experiment trying to figure out, how do we do this in a way that works for us. And at the end of those
mm,
2 years, we were like, actually, we think we figured this out. This feels really right for us. But it was a roller coaster.
yeah. I think what comes to mind is, in all those economy class or whatever they talk about, when you're forming a group, I might get the order wrong, but like forming, storming, norming, and I'm like, the 2 years of you guys trying to find that, what helped? Like, was it just you guys talking? Do you have access to any like, was there a you in your life then? You know what I mean?
No, I wish there
Oh
was.
shit. Okay.
That was a big part of the reason why I made the content. I didn't know anyone that was in an open relationship when we were opened up. This was in 2010, 2010, 2011. And we had a book. We had The Ethical Slut, which is kind of like the holy grail of how to open up a relationship back then. Um, but I didn't have any healthy examples of non-monogamy. And I think in some ways that was really wonderful because it forced us to figure out how to do this for ourselves. But
Mm,
on the other hand, I mean, it's nice having a role model. The first time we went to a swingers club, I met a woman and she said, she and her husband came to a swingers club pretty often. They were in an open relationship. Sorry, they came to the swingers club maybe like once a month. They had 3 kids. And I remember just grilling her on questions, be like, oh my gosh, do you get jealous? How does this work? Do your kids know? Like, what happens if he hooks up with someone? Like, do you get STI testing? Like, and I'm grilling her. And she's like hanging out in lingerie. Like, this was, she did not want to have like a journalistic interview style with holding her drink, being like, honey, this is you missed the context on this one, darling. um,
Oh my god, I can't imagine the poor woman is like, what is going on? But
uh,
I can imagine it though, because it's like you are thirsty for this knowledge, and this is someone that does something you might want to have. It's like,
mhm.
how did you get here?
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially in 2010, the examples that I had examples of healthy monogamy. My parents had been happily married for 40 years. Um, and then I had healthy examples of, I had healthy examples of monogamy, but I didn't have And I had a few handful healthy examples of divorce because I did know a couple people in my life that had divorced and were still amicable. And but majority of the examples I had of like unhealthy relationships, people who had gotten divorces, who'd put the kids in the middle, who had spent way too much money on divorce lawyers. Like I had all those examples, but I didn't have any examples of an alternative relationship growing up. I mean,
Mm,
thinking back on it, I don't think I had any, when I was in my 20s, I think I only knew one healthy example of a gay couple that was married, for example, back then.
mm,
Most of the gay couples that I knew that were at that time in 2010, the only examples of an alternative relationship I had were young, were my age. They hadn't been together for years and years. And so I think what's really fascinating and beautiful about social media and the internet is just how many examples of different lifestyles, people, relationship styles that you have out in the world. And that's everything from,
mm,
you know, relationships where people are living with any type of disability to mixed races to different religions to being in or from different countries. I mean, it's just beautiful how many examples we have out in the world, and mine is just a drop in the ocean of examples of different
mm,
relationships that are out there.
mm, mm, mm. Okay. Did that ever go anywhere, or was that just you met her that day and that was it? Never
Oh yeah,
kept in
she avoided
touch.
me the whole rest of the night. No, that she gave me a wide berth. Like, yeah, I was drunk.
So, 2 years in, I guess, at what point did you realize, okay, we found that sweet spot for you and your partner?
I think like most things, you find a sweet spot and then life happens and stuff changes. So I think we figured out rules for our relationship that worked for us. And, after those first 2 years of experimenting, of trial and error. And it's funny because now when I think about those old rules of ours, we considered we were each other's primary. We had veto power. So either of us could veto someone else at any time. I told him 24 hours before hooking up with someone. He would tell me within 48 hours of hooking up with someone. And then we just had a lot of transparency about our emotions and feelings with one another. And so we had certain rules that we followed. And then things changed when we moved in together. And then all our communication rules had to change. And then things changed when we became parents and all of our rules had to change. And so I think what I really think of as an open commitment is we are committed to our partnership and the lives that we are creating together. But we also give each other a lot of flexibility and space to grow, both independently as people, but then also together because life happens.
Mm,
We started
mm,
this when I was 25. I'm now 40.
mm-hmm.
We've we change and evolve, and we allow the relationship to do so as well. So I think the sweet spot is that it keeps changing. There
And
is no
then
sweet
also,
spot that lasts very long.
yeah, and being comfortable with that change, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever the change is, and being comfortable to navigate it together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, let's talk about jealousy,
Sure.
right? We are human and we are like social beings and we are like super emotional beings. Like, I don't care how logical people say they are. At the end of the day, as a human, we are like really driven by emotions, how we feel things. And, you know, how have you, over the years, how's jealousy played a role in you guys being open, and how have you navigated that?
Of course. As you say, we're human. We get jealous. I think my jealousy has changed as I've changed over the years. I think early on when I got jealous, I would get jealous of the other woman, that she had a better body, better hair, better and actually, no, I have an amazing hair. I don't think I've ever been jealous of another woman's hair. Um, but I have been jealous of other women who, had more interesting careers, who were doing more interesting things, traveling more, looked better, had better bodies, and so I would get jealous of these other women for things that I kind of wish I had. But that
Mm,
jealousy is rooted in my own insecurity. And I think by the
mm,
time I finally realized that, it was on me to solve. I am
Mm,
responsible for how I feel and look in my body. I am responsible for for like the adventures that I go on, the career choices that I make. And
mm,
and I think when I got to that point, it was a lot easier to not get jealous of other women.
mm,
And I still don't understand why it's so easy to get jealous of other women, and I can't figure out if it's like society has trained us to be competitive with each other as women. It's still wild to me that so much of my jealousy, especially in my 20s, late 20s and early 30s, was fueled by insecurities around other women. I think it's a
mm,
huge shame. I'd like to think, thankfully, I'm mostly over that. Um, and then later on, my jealousies would have more to do with like a fear of, for example, being replaced. I think a lot of people feel this in their relationships, especially when you're opening up. Am I opening up the door to be replaced by someone else? Did I invest all this time and energy into a relationship and then all of a sudden someone else could come along? And then
mm,
that fear of being replaced, I think sometimes fuels some jealousy. A fear of missing out. I still have this one. So if my husband is having an experience with someone else that I wish I would be part of, or I feel like I am not going to be able to share with him, then I would get jealous of that. But generally speaking, I find that the more secure I am in myself and in my relationship, the less jealous I am. So, generally speaking,
mm,
I think that that's really the determining factor.
mm,
Because I think when I'm struggling with stuff or when our relationship is struggling, that's definitely when we experience the most jealousy.
mm. So it's like you put in this amount of work, and when you are in that safe, secure place, I mean, it's not whatever, but it's not as impactful versus when things aren't as where you'd love them to be, something like that.
Yeah. Well, have you felt jealous in a relationship?
I mean, yeah. I'm like,
So
whoa.
what caused you to feel jealous?
But yeah, you're right. And I think honestly, what happens is that is comparison really. And
Mhm.
to me, like over the years, I've come to the point where it's like I'm fine with where I'm at. Like, it took time, but I'm okay where I'm at. And like, okay, if I do this thing and that person is in the same field and they are like, flying high or they are where I'd love to be, what I have now is joy for the person and maybe ask for a coffee so I can find out what they're doing
Yeah.
versus years
We call
ago, I was
that
like,
conversion in the non-monogamy field. Like, I feel joy for you. I like your success and your joy gives me joy.
you mentioned it, so let's just get into that. Compersion is something that I've heard a lot, and I'm like, read up on it. But to you, what is it? And I guess how do you develop it? Because I think it is something you have to work at.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I feel like all of our emotions do you think you can control your emotions? Like, do you think you can work on being more I mean, I guess we can work on being, like, more joyful, more
Exactly.
grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think what happens is like you feel the thing and then well, personally, I take time out and be like, okay, why am I feeling this way? Like, what is showing up for me in this moment, right? Like, what is the
Mhm.
thing I'm struggling with versus, and then internally I walk through it and I realize, okay, I want this person to be happy. I want them to have that experience. And if I'm like, I care for this person, I should be okay with supporting them in that experience. At least that's how I navigate it.
I so I'll be really honest with you with compersion, I don't feel it very often. Like, and I feel like maybe I should, but I don't, and I've gotten very good at being honest with how I actually feel and not how I think I should feel or how
Hmm,
I think
hmm.
someone wants me to feel. And it's interesting, if my husband is really happy and if he's pursuing something new and exciting, I'm really happy and really happy for him, and I support him, and I wanna make sure he's got the space to do the things that he loves, whether that's his art classes or whether that's him going on dates with other people. But most people that experience compersion and polyamory are deeply excited, almost the point of, like, turned on by their partner being happy with someone else. And
Hmm.
I'll be really honest, like, I've never really I think I've rarely experience that. It's very rare for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
Well,
does
yeah. Yeah.
and I think that that's just me being honest about it. Like, I want my husband to be really happy, and I want to be part of, like, I want to enable him to live the biggest and best life, and he wants to enable me to live the biggest and best life. Um, but I mean, I think that it's interesting because I think you just meet different people in this one. I've talked to so many men through social media that get so turned on, so excited about the idea of their woman being with someone else, and my husband does not experience this. And then you've got other people that that say, like, I'm so jealous, I would never allow another, like, anyone to touch my woman. And I know that I'm saying this in a very possessive way because I think that's how people often relay it to me.
Come close.
But
Yeah.
people are just different. We have different things that turn us on, that get us excited. And I think that jealousy is very hard to control. I think we learn to manage it and understand
Mm,
it. And
mm.
so I would say the same way that, like, sometimes anger is hard to control, but we learn to manage it. And I would say compersion is, you can't really control that either. These are emotions that either happen or they don't. And that's okay. Our human brains
Honestly,
and biology and chemistry all work a little bit different.
no. Yeah, I totally agree. I think as human beings, we are. It's like a continuum, right? And you can
Mhm.
flow between that. I don't think anyone is ever in one spot. You're always moving and flowing from here to here. Or sometimes I'm like, oh, for this, and sometimes it can be like not rational. Like you can't even explain why you're feeling that way. You just know, like for this thing, for this reason, I just, I just don't feel.
Absolutely. All right, Israel, I recognize that you are not gonna be a person that experiences this, but I am gonna bring something up, which is we were talking about how, like, all the changes that happen over the course of, like, an open relationship and how we're constantly changing, we're constantly adapting, and how we can't control our emotions. I am a 41-year-old woman who is perimenopausal. My hormones are insane right now. Like, I feel like I have the hormones of, like, a teenager. I randomly start crying. Like, we were watching Aladdin over the weekend, and my perimenopausal hormones, I just start crying everywhere. And then I'll, like, randomly just get crazy excited. So on top of all of the things I'm talking about, so on top of, like, the relationship is constantly evolving, especially, like, now we're getting into our 40s and we have older children, and the fact that you can't control your emotions, like, on top of that, my emotions are more of a roller coaster now than they have been forever before. And, like,
Mm.
and again, I don't think I can control them. And I'm trying to figure out how the heck do I manage this?
I would say you're doing a great job, honestly.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, you mentioned, that you are each other's primary, and at least at the beginning, I don't know if that's still
Mm,
part of your rules that you had like you could veto any relationship that came up. There is I don't want to say sex, but there are people that like have some issues with having primary powers and hierarchies. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thinking has definitely evolved in the past 15 years. So I think the way that I would describe my husband and I now is we're deeply entangled. We're very committed to one another,
Mm,
but our lives are deeply entangled. It's not like we choose. It's so funny because people, like, hate this term, like, "Oh, he's my primary, she's my primary partner." And I think the way the way that I would describe it to people now is, like, my husband and I are very deeply entangled, and it's something that other people who date us just need to be aware of. We share a
mm,
mortgage, we share finances. It's very important to us that we're raising our 2 children in an incredibly stable environment. Therefore,
mm,
we don't introduce partners to our children until that partnership has gotten very serious, to then that, and if we're dating I think there's 2 of our partners who have ever met our kids, for example. And so, we are, yeah, I mean, I think you could say that we're each other's primary, but, like, the thing is we also
mhm,
give each other, space to fall in love with other people. Both my husband and I have fallen in love with others. We've integrated them into our lives. We've had partners on vacation. Like, we really give each other so much freedom, but the truth is we share so much of our lives, and we've been together for so long, and our relationship is really stable, then I need
mm.
to describe that accurately to anyone who's dating me.
Mm, you touch on something that I just thought about. Like your lives are so entangled, but the other thing is you're a very busy woman, right? You're a mom, your wife, you have your business, you're writing this book, like you have so all these things.
Yeah.
And something that comes for me is like, sure, you can love many people, but you only have 24 hours in a day, you know? Like, how do you manage like the logistics and the time and that commitment when you have other partners?
Carefully. I mean, and I think it's probably one of the biggest challenges in dating is, like, I'm very upfront right away, which is, like, usually I only have a capacity for 1 date night a week. And again, my husband and I give each other a ton of space. Like, if I was in a serious relationship, we would figure out how to make time for weekends away or additional date nights, and that's what we have done in the past. Um, but right now, my capacity is just so limited. Um, it's it's really hard, and I think, again, we would figure it out. If you enter into a relationship and you want to have a closer emotional and physical connection with that person, my husband and I will figure that out. We will move things around because just priorities shift. But
Mm,
right now, at this point in time, the most accurate way for me to describe I think what's really important is that I'm just accurate and honest with people that I'm dating in terms of, like, this is my capacity. My capacity at this moment in time is extremely limited. My capacity to date other people wasn't as limited in my 20s and early 30s. And honestly, it probably won't be as limited when the kids move out of the house, right? Our relationship
right.
can, but for the phase that we are in right now, I have extremely limited capacity. But I want to talk on veto for a second as well, because my husband and I no longer have veto, and it's more that we no longer feel the need for veto, and we don't see it as helpful. And I think that has been a really interesting shift because one
Mm,
of the things that I think happens when I see people veto other like potential partners is it's kinda like the grass is greener, the forbidden fruit. When partner A vetoes someone for partner B, all of a sudden, like, partner B can feel so many things. They can feel resentful, they can feel like they didn't get to have a choice in the matter, they can feel like, they like, that they just had their autonomy removed. And so I
mm,
think that dynamic creates so much friction in a relationship that veto is not worth it. And so
mm,
I think the biggest thing for partners is to say rather than veto, like have the conversations, communicate like why is this someone that you feel uncomfortable with? Why do you have concerns? Because oftentimes our partners know us really well and so, I was dating someone and my husband was like, "Danielle, you're not yourself. You're irritable. You're a little bit you're like showing insecurities that I haven't seen in a really long time. You're kind of like mentally really scattered. Like you get I was like he's like you're not acting like yourself in this relationship." And I'm voicing my concerns. And
mm,
I couldn't see it because I was in the crazy NRE, new relationship energy, oh my goodness, phase. And so if he would have vetoed that person, all of a sudden I would have
mm,
been fighting harder to be in that relationship. But the moment he told me his concerns, because he'd never met the guy, his concerns were based on how I was acting and what he was
mm,
used to seeing from me, and they were all really valid and true concerns. And so I think that one of the things that has shifted as well is that if people need veto, especially early on opening up the relationship, I understand it. I think veto should be seen as a communication tool, a way to
mm,
communicate, wow, I'm really concerned about this particular person, and here is why.
mm.
And it is up to you to make a decision that makes sense. But this is me voicing my concerns in the best interest of you, because hopefully it is in the best interest of you and our relationship.
You know, you mentioned that you've had examples of people in monogamous relationships that are just amazing, and people that have navigated divorce and still make it work. But I'm saying, are there things that you've been being poly this long that you think, even if these people are in monogamous relationships and they don't want to do anything with poly, are there things they can learn or borrow from like poly relationships?
Oh, absolutely. I think, we are talking about jealousy. I think people experience jealousy, whether, in so many circumstances. I talk about this a lot in my writing, which is like in terms of jealousy, understanding the triggers, but then really asking why over and over to understand the root cause. Because when you can understand the root cause that's fueling your jealousy, you can manage it and you can understand it and you can make changes. And I think that is so important that anyone in any relationship could benefit. I think recognizing that our relationships change. I mean, this is the case whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous or in a triad or something in between. Our
Mm,
relationships change and evolve as we do. And I think granting and gifting your partner a certain level of freedom to still be an independent person experiencing and enjoying things, even if you as their partner don't enjoy them, is
mm,
important. And again, not relationship specific. um, I think the communication that is required in an open relationship, the transparency that is required in order to do things that essentially make your partner uncomfortable is so important and so valid. And I hope, yeah, I wonder sometimes if we would have as good as communication as we do. I'm sure we would have gotten to that point, but I think opening up our relationship, those first 2 years of opening up our relationship taught
mm,
us how to communicate, taught us how to argue, taught us how to voice our feelings when things were uncomfortable, taught us how to, you know, say speak our desires. I mean, I think so often in relationships it's scary to bring up a desire that's new. And we learned how to have all these conversations by opening up. So obviously you don't need to open up in order to have all those conversations. It's one hell of a way to learn how to do it though.
Let's talk about the book. You mentioned, I'm not sure if it was on your Substack or like on your Instagram, but you said that when you started writing the book, you were going to show your partner, but he's like, I don't even want to see it until it's done. Do you want to share a little bit about that, and
Yeah,
then talk
sure.
about the book itself?
Sure. So the book is so my agent and I are chopping the book out in March. And so it is still so the man yeah, so this has been a labor of love. It has taken on so many iterations. Um it's still a work in progress in that regard. But it was interesting. So when I was telling my husband, that about the book and the concept I had and how I wanted to write it, I I mean, my husband and I have such amazing communication. I was like, "Oh, I really want your opinions." He's like, "Great, but I think you should write the entire book before I give you my opinions." And I think that this is because I'm so heavily influenced, by his opinions. I love his thoughts, and but I wanted to write it completely fresh from my perspective first before I integrate
Mm,
anyone else's opinions. And this doesn't just apply to him. I think that
mm,
um, I had a friend that I was going back and forth with, and I greatly appreciated her feedback, but I was like, "You know what? Wait a minute. I need to write this 100% from my perspective in my bubble before I get input from anyone else." And I think
mm,
this almost goes back to our very first conversation that we had about opening up to your parents. Don't open yourself up for feedback or too much feedback anyway, until you feel really good, until you've like really analyzed everything for yourself and like you feel good about your choices and your decisions, and that's sort of how I am with my writing.
mm, mm.
I'm gonna get
Yeah,
lots of feedback. I'm now I've written it and I'm now in the process of getting a lot of feedback. So I think getting feedback is important, but get yourself to a point where you are ready to receive that feedback.
yeah. Okay, no, that's good to know. Can't wait for the book. So if anyone is checking out this episode and they're like, okay, well, I'm convinced or I want to try poly, what are, I guess, some advice you can share and like any resources
Yeah.
apart from your amazing Substack, of course.
So yeah, come check me out on openlycommitted.com, on Substack, Instagram, TikTok. Okay, so what would my advice be for opening up your relationship?
Mhm.
Know why. Be able to articulate why do you want to open up your relationship. There's so many reasons. Do you want to experience being with the same sex, with the same gender? Do you want to just add a little spice and excitement? Are you, like did you fall in love with someone else? Like, what is the reason? Being able to articulate the why for opening up. Because here's
Mm,
the thing, when you go to your partner and you say, "Hey, I want to experience this thing," or "I'm experiencing this thing," or "I found myself really attracted to a woman. I've never had this experience before," or "I want to do whatever it is," go to your partner with that why. Because an open relationship might be a solution, but it's not the only solution. And I think oftentimes when partners go to their partner and say, "Oh, I want to be in an open relationship," they feel like that's the only option available. But usually there's a lot of options
mm,
available. And I think and not limiting yourself right away is really important. I think the second thing is there's no timeline for opening up a relationship. You and your
mm,
partner can decide to be open every second Thursday in months that begin with the letter J, right? You do not have to go 0 to 60. You do not have to go from monogamous to polyamorous overnight. That is unrealistic.
mm,
If you're opening up your relationship, think of it as baby steps. What is the next step that you can do together, either for yourself or in your partnership, towards to get you closer to the relationship style that you're after?
mm,
Um, and I think then my other one that I had mentioned previously as well is communicate how you're actually feeling, not how you feel like you're supposed to feel or how you think your partner wants you to feel.
mm,
Being really honest with how you are actually feeling
mm.
is the number one thing that if I could go back in time and change and do differently when opening up, that would be it. There were so many things I was like, I should feel jealous. I should be angry, or this shouldn't bother me, or I should feel this. Um, I think it would have been way easier for me. I would have been easier on myself, if I had just been honest about how I was feeling. Both to
That's where
myself
that experience. That's where that experience comes in. You've done this for years and years and years and years and years, and I want to say personally, for me, thank you so much for how much you share and how also receptive you are to. Because the other thing you do, especially like on your Instagram, is it doesn't matter how much of a troll the person is in the questions or the comments, you actually answer. And then I also love when you stitch, because there was one of I really love this reel you shared that was you were replying these two ladies they had a podcast, and I was
Oh,
like,
yes.
if you have an open relationship, somebody's happy and someone is sad or something, and you actually kind of broke it down. I really really appreciate that.
Ah, thank you. But please note, I am not a saint. I block ton of people. I I've gotten very good at using the block button. If someone
Okay.
God, I mean, listen, I try to be very, I what's the best way to say this? Like, I try to answer any genuine question that comes to me in DMs, and it takes me I get a lot, so it sometimes takes me a while to respond. So I try to respond to any genuine question via DMs, but I get so many inappropriate questions, DMs, comments, everything from, like, dating to wanting to, like, be a sugar daddy to just horrid, awful comments. No, I'm very good at blocking. Nowadays, I'm like, if someone asks me something and I like you can see that there's a hint of curiosity, I will try and give someone the benefit of the doubt. But there are plenty of comments where there's no benefit of the doubt needed. This person is just being and I block them.
Okay, okay. And that was, I mean, it's a good segue to ask this next question. Like, how do you navigate? Because you have a ton of followers everywhere. How do you navigate that? Like, social media is just a cesspool of the worst, because it gives this mask for most people. So, how do you navigate social media apart from blocking the people that deserve it?
Oh, god. Yeah, I honestly this is one of the things that's changing. I thought I had figured it out, and now what worked previously isn't quite working for me anymore. For a long time, I would limit myself to about an hour on social media a day. So then that's separate from editing a video and posting a video.
Mhm.
And then I would give myself an hour a day to respond to comments and DMs, and I would block that time and just be like, that is my window of time. And I think that I have been sucked into social media rabbit hole. I think it's been harder for me to, like, stick to my own rules and limits recently, and I don't know why, because I find it quite draining. And
Mm.
then also I feel like the content I'm seeing on social media is so much less engaging because so often I'm trying to figure out, is this AI or not? Like, or is
All
this,
right.
or so much of my content is like, here, use this sound to get the next 10,000 followers. Like, I miss the stories. I feel like my social media, my feed is fewer stories, is fewer, what I was describing to you earlier is that window into the world and other people's lives that I just
Mm.
loved about social media. I feel like I'm getting less and less of it right now.
Mm.
And it makes me sad because it's kind of, it has, I feel less excited to engage, create at the moment.
Mm.
And I hope that changes. But I think one of the things that has been helpful for me, and like I said, I'm not perfect at it right now, is really to limit my time, that I'm spending on social media. And interestingly, I got to a point where I was getting a lot of hate comments, and I had to decide that I wouldn't be affected by hate comments. Like, I couldn't, if I wasn't going to listen to the hate comments, I couldn't listen to the crazy praise either. Because I get these, like,
Right.
weird, like, "Oh my god, you're the most perfect, beautiful woman in the whole wide world." And it's a little bit strange to get stuff like that. So I've
Mm.
sort of decided, like, one of the things that sort of mentally helped me is that I've removed this extremes. Like, I try not to register, or I try not to, overthink, what's the right word here? But I try to disregard any extreme comments, whether those extreme negative comments or extreme positive comments. And I
Mm.
find that most of the humans, the non-trolls, the non-weirdos, non-creepsters, most of the humans are kind of in the middle,
Mm.
sending me questions, responding with their personal experiences. And so I really am trying to engage with that middle zone of people who have questions, people are curious, and I really go and actively look for that. And I think that that is part of how I've been able to carve out this, like, little piece of the internet, that is the openly committed community.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful community. I can't wait to read what your next post on your Substack will be like. I'm always waiting for the next
What
one.
you know what it's
Uh,
about? It's how to answer the hardest questions. So it'll actually go up in a couple days, and it's
okay.
it's ideas and ways to respond to people's hardest questions and statements about open relationships. So
Ah,
I'll tease that here, and you can go check it out on the Substack coming soon.
amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm gonna let you go with this one. You talked about rules and boundaries. Do you have any rules and boundaries now when you're dating someone else?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think, so boundaries are something that I can protect for myself and that I am in charge of. And so I think, like, some of my, and then rules and agreements are agreements that I've made with my partner. And it's interesting. I think that our agreements now are much more loose than they've been before. Our communication has changed. So I still communicate in advance of going on a date that I'm going on a date, and, like, kind of where I met the person, what we're planning to do from, and then my husband and I now carve out special time, each week or month or whenever it's needed, to then actually go through and talk about the experiences. And so it's much more like we've carved out time, and usually in our week, where we will discuss kind of dating and our experiences with others and our feelings and emotions about relationships outside of ours, which is
Mm.
very different than how it was early on. And that's just sort of that's how we communicate. And so I'm not sure it's a rule, but it is kind of an agreement for, like, what works for us now.
Mm.
We have an agreement that we each kind of get a night off a week to do whatever we want, whether that's going on dates or whether that's going to art classes, or whatever. Or
Mm.
honestly, like, I took myself out to a restaurant because I used to do it all the time when I wasn't dating and my husband was dating, and now neither of us are we're both dating very casually, but neither of us have a partner, have a partner outside of our marriage. And I was like, "Wow, I haven't taken myself out to a restaurant in a long time." And it is just glorious showing up at a restaurant knowing that your partner is fully responsible for bedtime, And reading a Kindle and having like a 2-hour dinner to yourself, like, it's so indulgent. I recommend it to everybody. So I think that that's one of our agreements, like, we give each other space to pursue our passions.
Mm.
Um, I'm trying to think we also have rules around sexual safety. Those are very clear. I think that those are pretty standard in non-monogamy in terms of always using protection, asking for screenings, doing screenings on a regular basis. Um And I guess, yeah, and other than that, it's just about communication and allowing each other to evolve and change and staying honest with each other as we do.
Wow. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for
Of
sharing. I can't wait
course.
for the new episode. I can't wait for the new post on your Substack. And really, really grateful for the time. I can't wait for your next reel. I just want to say thank you for everything and thank you for coming to the sanctuary today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.